She ruined every love I ever had and called it a game. So, I dated the one man she couldn't win. The man she once chased for 5 years. When she kissed him in the library, someone recorded it. That clip didn't just expose her. It ended her. I didn't post it. I didn't need to. I had the wedding. And for once she had the silence. But the story didn't start there. It started years earlier. They say sisters are supposed to be your built-in best friends. Mine felt more like a silent predator waiting in the shadows, watching me find something good, then pouncing the moment I smiled too brightly. The first time I realized Caroline had a pattern, I was 16. His name was Marcus. He played the saxophone in jazz band and wore glasses that always slipped down his nose. He used to walk me home from school, his backpack slung over one shoulder, humming Coltrane under his breath. One Friday, I told Caroline over dinner that he'd asked me to the spring formal. She barely reacted, just stabbed her green beans and said, "That's cute." By Monday, Marcus had canceled our plans. By Friday, he was sitting next to Caroline at lunch laughing at something she said while twirling her hair. She didn't even like jazz. It kept happening. Sometimes I'd meet someone in class or a friend of a friend at a party. We'd talk, click, exchange numbers. If Caroline caught wind of it even casually, somehow she'd insert herself. Sometimes overtly, sometimes like a ghost you didn't realize was there until everything felt colder. By college, I'd stopped telling her about my love life. I was at Portland State, she was at a private university across town, but she always seemed to know. Friends we had in common, social media, even mutual professors. And if I so much as posted a picture with a guy, she'd be in the comments or the DMs within hours. The worst of it was Asher. Asher Bennett was different, or so I thought. He was studying pre-med, 2 years older, and had this quiet warmth about him that made you want to lean in and listen when he spoke. He read poetry. Real poetry, not the Instagram kind. He made me feel seen in a way no one else had. We met at a mutual friend's Thanksgiving dinner during sophomore year. 2 weeks later, he asked me out for coffee. I felt like the universe was finally giving me something just for me. We dated for almost a month. 4 beautiful weeks. He'd text me good morning. He remembered my favorite kind of tea. He once walked 20 blocks in the rain just to bring me a book he thought I'd love. Then Caroline visited campus. I should have known. She texted me that she was in the area and wanted to grab lunch. I was thrilled, foolishly. I introduced her to Asher during a coffee run. She gave him one of those half smiles she does when she's calculating. He said he was late for class and left, and Caroline just watched him go with this glint in her eyes that made my stomach twist. 4 days later, Asher started pulling back. Shorter texts, late replies, then nothing. When I asked him if I'd done something wrong, he said it wasn't me, he just needed space. That weekend, someone tagged him in a photo from a downtown bar. He was sitting beside Caroline. Her hand was on his thigh. She didn't deny it when I called her. Just laughed and said, "Maybe you two weren't as serious as you thought." It broke something in me. Not just my heart. My trust. My sense of safety in the world. After that, I stopped dating altogether. I threw myself into my sociology classes, picked up shifts at the university writing center, and tried to pretend I didn't care. I told myself maybe I wasn't built for love, maybe I was one of those people who did well alone. I even considered transferring schools, but my scholarship wouldn't carry over. Then came Milo Everett. I first noticed him at a campus volunteer fair. He was helping set up booths, laughing with 2 kids from a youth mentorship program. He had this easy confidence, like he didn't need to perform for anyone. When he looked at you, he really looked. Not past you. Not through you. I remembered that Carolyn had talked about him years ago. Back when she was a freshman and he was a sophomore. She'd tried to flirt with him at a charity basketball event and bragged about getting his number. But a week later, she said he never texted back. That he was boring anyway. I'd forgotten about that until I saw him again at the student union holding a box of flyers and offering me one with a crooked grin. His eyes lit up when I mentioned sociology. We talked for almost an hour. He walked me back to my dorm, hands in his pockets, the kind of slow stroll that makes you forget the time. I didn't plan anything. I didn't plot, But somewhere deep inside something flickered, a thought I wasn't proud of. What if I got close to the one guy Caroline never could? What if for once I came out ahead? It wasn't revenge. Not exactly. It was curiosity, maybe even a little justice. And if love happened along the way, well, I wasn't about to stop it. Still, I was careful. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post pictures. I just let it grow quietly like something sacred. Or maybe like a fuse burning its way towards something I couldn't quite name yet. I saw Caroline 2 weeks later at our parents' house for Sunday dinner. She was going on about her new position at a marketing firm in Seattle, how her boss called her indispensable. Then she glanced at me, fork hovering midair, and asked casually, "So, are you seeing anyone?" I smiled slow and small. No one special. But my heart was already miles away. And Caroline. She could smell it. That scent of something just out of reach. And like always, I knew she'd come looking. Only this time I'd be ready. We started small. Study sessions at the student union, walks through the Japanese garden on the edge of campus, shared fries at a food truck under the soft Portland rain. Milo never rushed. He listened, asked questions, remembered the tiniest details like how I hated the smell of lavender because it reminded me of hospital soap. It wasn't long before we were inseparable. He introduced me to his mentor from the MBA program and brought me to his pickup basketball games, where I sat on the bleachers pretending not to blush every time he glanced up and winked at me. After a month, I stopped hiding it. We walked hand in hand on campus. We posted a picture from a hiking trip to Multnomah Falls. Nothing flashy, just our sneakers on the trail, and the caption, "Made it to the top." The next day, Caroline texted me. "So cute. You and Milo, huh?" I didn't reply. 2 hours later, she called and invited us both to dinner. She said she'd made reservations at a place called Ember, one of those trendy new American restaurants with small plates and reclaimed wood everything. I could hear the smile in her voice. I told Milo about it, watching his expression carefully. He gave a nonchalant shrug. "Sure. It'll be interesting to see what your sister's really like." She greeted us in a crimson dress that clung to her in all the places she wanted noticed. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek bun, revealing gold hoop earrings and a smooth neck she kept tilting ever so slightly when she laughed. She kissed my cheek, and then Milo's, holding his shoulder just a second too long. Her nails were painted wine red. The hostess led us to a booth in the back. The lighting was low, almost intimate, and the music soft enough to pretend it didn't matter. Caroline slid into the seat beside Milo without asking. I sat across from them and smiled so tightly my jaw ached. She asked him about basketball, about his classes, about his plans after graduation. Every compliment she gave had an undercurrent, like she was appraising a wine she planned to drink later. "You must be good at reading people on the court," she said, resting her elbow on the table, her chin in her hand. "I bet you're quick at figuring out what someone's going to do next." Milo smiled politely. "It helps to stay calm. Look for the patterns." "Oh, I love patterns," she purred. When the server came to take our order, she made a show of not knowing what to pick. "What are you getting?" she asked Milo. "Probably the scallops," he said. "Then I'll get that too. I always like sharing." She turned to me then, as if she'd just remembered I was there. "You want to split something with me too, Cece?" I declined. I didn't call her out. Not yet. The food arrived, and for a moment there was only the clink of silverware and low chatter from the other tables. I let the conversation drift. Let her think she was controlling the tempo. Then, midway through her third story about some client in Seattle who was obsessed with her presentation skills, I dropped my fork. I ducked under the table, slow and casual, and saw it. Her left foot bare inside an open-toe stiletto, resting lightly between Milo's shoes. Not quite touching. Just close enough. He didn't move. Not an inch. I straightened and picked up my fork, placing it back on the table with care. My heart thudded. Milo didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on Caroline, who was now explaining how difficult it was to date men who were intimidated by ambition. I excused myself to the restroom. Inside, I leaned against the sink and stared at my reflection. Maybe he didn't notice. Maybe she slid it there after he settled in. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe like every other time I was about to lose something I cared about. I took a deep breath and returned to the table. They were laughing at something. Milo turned when he saw me, a softness in his eyes that made everything twist inside. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah. Just needed a break from the perfume in here." Caroline reached into her purse and handed me a mint. "You always were sensitive." When the check came, Milo reached for it. Caroline placed her hand over his. "Let me," she said. "My treat. It's not every day I get to dine with such good company." "Thanks, but I got it," Milo said, gently pulling the bill toward him. As we left the restaurant, Caroline hugged us both. Her arms lingered around Milo's waist. I watched his hands. They stayed at his sides. On the ride home, I didn't say anything. Neither did he. The silence wasn't awkward, but it wasn't easy either. Back at my apartment, I turned to him as he walked me to the door. "Did you notice what she was doing?" He hesitated. "Just a beat." "Yes. And I didn't want to make a scene." I nodded. "She's not going to stop." He sighed and looked away. "I'll handle it." I looked up at him, trying to read between the lines. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. "Good night, Celeste." I watched him walk away under the glow of the street lamp, tall and steady. Inside, I sat on my bed and stared at the floor. Something wasn't sitting right. And I wasn't sure if it was her behavior or his silence. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the dinner scene over and over in my mind, the curve of Caroline's smile, the angle of her body leaning just a little too close to Milo, and that one damning image burned behind my eyes, her foot resting between his. And Milo still as stone. Not recoiling, not shifting, not even flinching. The next morning, we met at the library steps. Milo was already there, sitting on the edge of the planter box, stirring his coffee with the wooden stick like he was waiting for courage to rise from the bottom. He smiled when he saw me, but I didn't return it. We walked in silence to the garden bench near the anthropology building, the one surrounded by tall hedges and ivy-stained bricks. It was a quiet corner of campus, a place people forgot existed, which made it perfect for conversations that mattered. I sat first. He followed. "Did you notice what she did?" I asked. He paused like he needed to replay the scene in his own mind. Or maybe he didn't want to answer. "Under the table," I added. His face stiffened. "Yeah. I noticed. You didn't move." He let out a long breath. I didn't want to cause a scene. She was pushing, testing, trying to get a reaction. If I had flinched or kicked her away, she'd have spun it into something. I thought ignoring it would take away her power. "You thought silence would protect me, I thought it would protect us." I stared at him, my fingers curling around the edge of the bench. "You should have told me. That's not your decision to make for both of us." "You looked exhausted, Celeste." I didn't want to add more stress. "That's not your call." He nodded slowly, guilt tightening his features. "You're right. I'm sorry. I should have said something." There was no fire in my voice, just disappointment. And yet, something in the way he looked at me, direct, open, unflinching, stopped the distrust from spreading further. I didn't want to push more. But I also wasn't ready to forget. That evening, while organizing my desk drawer, I pulled out my old recorder. I used it back in freshman year for linguistics, but I'd kept it because I couldn't bear to delete some of the lectures from my favorite professor. I checked the batteries, tested it, and slid it between my poetry textbook and the candle jar on the top shelf of my bookshelf. Right next to the desk. Out of sight, perfectly positioned. Not because I didn't believe Milo, but because I knew Caroline. 2 days later, Milo came over to help me study. He brought tea this time, not coffee, said I looked jittery lately. He wore a faded Oregon Ducks hoodie and had 2 mechanical pencils clipped to his collar like he was preparing for battle. We studied for a good hour, nothing more than flashcards and small jokes about my terrible handwriting. It felt light again, almost easy. The kind of ordinary I'd missed. Then the buzzer rang. I didn't even have to check. I knew it was her. "It's me," Caroline called. "I left a sweater last time. Can I come grab it?" I looked at Milo. He didn't say anything, just gave a small nod. "Sure," I said into the intercom and buzzed her in. She arrived less than a minute later, breezing in like she owned the air. She wore yoga pants, a white cropped fleece jacket, and a smirk that never fully reached her eyes. "Well, don't you two look cozy," she said, eyeing the empty teacups. "Just studying Milo," answered voice flat. She hummed like she didn't believe him. Then walked to my closet, opened it without asking, and slowly browsed as if she had all the time in the world. "Here it is," she said, pulling out a soft gray sweater I didn't even remember seeing before. Before I could respond, she turned to Milo. "Can I ask you something, just sister to sister's boyfriend?" He blinked. Okay." She stepped a little closer. "What's it like being with someone so safe?" I stood up, heart thudding. "Caroline." She didn't even glance at me. "I mean, she's lovely, truly. But I always thought you'd be someone who needed more." Milo stood slowly, towering over her even though he wasn't trying to. "You need to leave, Caroline." She raised an eyebrow. "Why, nervous? I'll say something true. You said enough." She stepped forward, lowering her voice to a whisper I could still hear. "You chose her because she's easy. Predictable. But tell me this, have you ever really burned for her?" My pulse spiked. But Milo didn't flinch. "I'm with Celeste because I choose her. Every day, she's real, she doesn't pretend. She doesn't perform." He took a small step forward. "And I've never once wanted anything else." Caroline's face flickered with something sharp. Then she chuckled like it didn't matter, tossed the sweater over her shoulder, and turned to me. "You should lock your door, Cece. Not everyone's as honest as you think." Then she left. The silence after was thick. Milo sat back down beside me, rubbing his temples. "I'm sorry, again." "I know." We didn't talk much after that. He left an hour later, brushing my cheek with his hand on the way out. I waited until the hallway was still. Then reached for the recorder and hit play. Her voice came through clearly, every word a blade. I listened to the way she tried to make him doubt. The way she described me as boring. The way she questioned his desire. And then Milo's voice, steady, firm, no hesitation. "I choose her. Every day." My breath caught in my chest. For a moment I let myself believe it was over. But then at the very end of the recording, after the door clicked shut, her voice slipped through the static again. Barely above a whisper. "This isn't over." I stared at the recorder in my hand, heart suddenly calm in a way that only comes before a storm. Because she was right. It wasn't. The invitation came the next morning, wrapped in an overly cheerful text and 3 sunflower emojis. Carolyn wanted to grab brunch, just the two of us. Said she was reflecting lately, trying to be a better sister. My thumb hovered over the screen for a good minute before I replied. "Sure." When and where? She picked a trendy spot in the Pearl District called Sunday Table. Everything there was pastel and sunlit, full of people who wore sunglasses indoors and ordered oat milk lattes with lavender syrup. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing a dark sweater and no makeup. I wasn't interested in pretending. She showed up on the dot wearing a cream blouse, pearl studs, and a demure skirt. The effect was unsettling. Caroline never dressed down unless she was dressing up for something else. "Celeste," she said, drawing out the last syllable like it was our childhood again. "You look tired. Is everything okay?" "I'm fine." She hugged me like she meant it and ordered 2 cappuccinos before I even sat down. I noticed she didn't mention Milo's name at first. She talked about yoga, a client retreat in Bend, some new book on mindful dating. It was strange. She didn't flirt, didn't smirk, didn't lean forward like she was gauging my pulse. And then, casually, she asked how Milo was doing. "Good," I said flatly. "Busy with finals." She nodded, sipping her coffee. "He's really impressive." I was surprised by how thoughtful he is. "You two seem solid." That word sat too clean on her tongue. "Thanks. You know, I've been thinking a lot about how I used to act. Especially around your boyfriends. I was competitive. Jealous, maybe. You always had this sweetness people were drawn to. I guess I hated that back then. I kept my expression neutral. And now I want to do better. Maybe this is what growing up looks like." She smiled. I forced one back. Halfway through the avocado toast, she insisted on splitting. She excused herself to the restroom. The moment she disappeared around the corner, I reached across the table and grabbed her phone. It was unlocked. Of course it was. I opened her texts and scrolled quickly. Most threads were boring. Work, friends, and ex. Then I found it. A conversation with someone saved as just E. That alone was suspicious. Caroline never abbreviated anything unless she wanted to hide it. The most recent message read, "Let her think she's winning. Keep Milo close. It's almost time." And her response, "Exactly, she won't see it coming." I took a quick photo with my phone heart pounding, then returned hers to the table and pretended to stir my drink as she walked back humming softly. That night I showed the screenshot to Milo in my apartment. He stared at it in silence for a long while. "Who the hell is E?" I shook my head. "No idea. But she's planning something. And whoever E is, they're part of it." He sat on the edge of my bed scrolling through the messages again. "This is calculated. It's not just petty games anymore. She's working with someone. This is manipulation. You think she's trying to break us up, number? I think she wants something else. And this E, maybe he does too." We sat there piecing together names, memories, fragments. I remembered Caroline once dated a guy named Ethan during sophomore year. It had ended fast and messy. I barely remembered his face. Milo did. "Ethan Doyle," he said suddenly. "He was in my economics class. Tall, smug, always trying to out-talk the professor." "I think he played rec league with you," I added. "He did. And he hated me." Why? Milo paused. "There was this game. He got in my face over a foul, shoved me. I pushed back harder. He tripped and hit his head on the bench. Nothing major, but he blamed me for weeks. Called me a thug in front of the whole gym. And now he's Asher's cousin." My stomach dropped. Asher, my ex. The one Caroline stole like it was a game of musical chairs. "This is connected." Milo nodded. "Too many threads tying back to her. Too many people she's crossed paths with, all coming together again. Do you think she's using Ethan to get to you or to me? Maybe both. But if Ethan's in this, he won't stop until he gets something out of it." We sat in silence for a while, the air in the room thick with old names and new implications. My phone buzzed. A message from Caroline. "Had a great time today. Hope we can start fresh." I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled out a notebook and wrote down every interaction I could remember between her and Ethan. Every conversation she'd had that felt too rehearsed. Every glance. Every smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then I circled the phrase she used in the message, "Let her think she's winning." She wanted me to feel safe. Which meant I wasn't. And neither was Milo. ChatGPT Darnoi. The next day, I skipped my afternoon class and spent 4 hours in the campus library, digging through archived emails and student records like I was chasing ghosts. I started with the old complaint logs from the scholarship board, the kind that most students didn't even know existed. It took me 3 tries and a faculty login borrowed from my TA job to access the right files. There it was. An anonymous email dated last December. Sent just days before Milo's scholarship renewal was scheduled for final review. The subject line read, "Academic misconduct concern regarding Milo Harris." Inside was a single paragraph accusing him of plagiarizing a research paper for his political science course. It quoted lines, cited sources, and sounded just believable enough to be damaging. The signature was simply a concerned student. My throat tightened. Milo had nearly lost that scholarship. He hadn't told me then, not all the details. He just said there had been a delay and that things had worked out after he met with the dean and submitted documentation proving the work was his. I copied the email and traced the metadata. The address was masked, routed through an encrypted server. But the IP used to send it matched a campus computer lab terminal. I requested access logs. A favor from the IT desk clerk. I had once helped find her lost engagement ring in the dining hall. Only 3 people used that terminal the afternoon the email was sent. One of them was Ethan Doyle. I printed the logs and held them tight the whole walk across campus, wind biting my cheeks and rustling the edge of the pages. My hands felt colder than the air. I found Ethan outside the student finance office, casually sipping an energy drink and scrolling through his phone. He looked up as I approached, eyebrows rising, like he was genuinely pleased to see me. Celeste Whitman. As I live and breathe. I didn't waste time. You sent that email about Milo. He didn't even blink. Which one? The plagiarism accusation. You tried to sabotage his scholarship. He smiled slowly, teeth white and sharp. Oh, that. Sure. It was a good piece of writing, wasn't it? Why? Because I could, he said simply. Because it was fun. You were in finance. You had nothing to do with him. You dated Caroline for 3 weeks 2 years ago. I wasn't trying to impress Caroline. Then who? He stepped a little closer, lowered his voice. I don't like Milo. I don't like his perfect hair or his basketball trophies or the way people assume he's the good guy. And I definitely don't like the way he looks at you like you're some golden ticket to a better life. He tilted his head. And as for Caroline, well, she's just the kind of gasoline that likes to be thrown on fire. I don't have to like her to hand her a match. My fingers curled into fists. So, what, this is just entertainment for you, watching the two of you tear each other apart. It's better than Netflix. I turned without another word. My legs felt stiff like moving through cement. He didn't follow. Just whistled as I walked away. Back at my apartment, I showed Milo the printouts. He read them in silence, his hands gripping the pages like they were holding weight. He actually did this. He admitted it to my face. Milo sat down, rubbing his temples like he was trying to keep his thoughts from spilling over. I knew something felt off last semester. I didn't think anyone would go that far. It wasn't just him, I said. Caroline knew. She might not have pressed send, but she gave him the reason. She fed the fire. He didn't respond right away. Just stared out the window at the rust-colored trees bending in the wind. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than I expected. I'm tired, Celeste. I moved closer, sat beside him on the couch. His shoulders were tense beneath his hoodie, his jaw clenched like it was bracing for impact. I should have seen this coming. I should have been smarter. You were trying to live your life. You weren't looking for war. He gave a bitter laugh. And yet, here we are. I turned toward him, resting my forehead against his temple. This wasn't how I planned any of this, I whispered. You weren't supposed to matter. At first you were just. He turned slightly, eyes meeting mine. Just what? A statement. A way to take something she couldn't touch. He didn't flinch. And now you're the only thing I don't want to lose. For a moment, the room was still. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the low breath between us. Then he reached up, tucked a piece of hair behind my ear. We won't lose, he said quietly. But I need to know you're really in this. Not just for revenge. For us. I looked into his eyes and nodded. Not the kind of nod that comes with promises. The kind that comes with certainty. Yes. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window pane like a warning. Inside, we sat close enough to feel each other breathe and far enough apart to brace for what was coming. The rooftop pulsed with music, lights strung from steel beams catching the shimmer off people's glasses and sequins. Lana's birthday party had drawn a full crowd, all dressed to impress, laughing like midterms and real life didn't exist. Milo and I arrived just after 8. He took my hand as we entered, his fingers warm and steady, and for a while I let myself believe this was just a normal night. But then Caroline appeared. She made an entrance like always, arriving 20 minutes late and commanding the room without a word. Her black satin dress was practically poured onto her body, high-slit plunging neckline, and just enough effortlessness to make it feel intentional. Her hair was pulled back in that soft, effortless twist she always wore when she wanted to look like she wasn't trying at all. She didn't greet anyone at first. Just smiled, that delicate, polished smile, and drifted toward the bar, heels tapping softly against the rooftop floor. She didn't look at me directly. Not yet. But I felt her gaze. Everywhere we went I could sense her watching. Milo didn't say anything either. His arm stayed around my waist like a quiet shield, and we made the rounds. We hugged, Lana chatted with old friends, accepted compliments about how great we looked together. But underneath it all I knew, she was waiting. It didn't take long. About an hour and Milo offered to grab us drinks. I nodded, pretending not to notice that Caroline had edged closer and closer as the evening wore on. Once he disappeared toward the bar she struck. I felt her presence before she spoke. She moved into the space beside me without making a sound, just a brush of perfume and silk and calculation. "You're glowing," she said, voice sweet as syrup. "Must be the lighting," I replied flatly. "Or the illusion," she murmured. She folded her arms and looked out toward the skyline, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make me shift. "You know, you've always had a talent for pretending you're the one in control, Celeste. And you've always had a talent for mistaking obsession for strategy." She gave a small laugh. "Do you really think you've won? I'm not playing your game anymore, Caroline." She turned to face me, eyes sharp. "Milo is your weakness. Just like Asher was. You wrap yourself around these men like they're your armor, but really they're just mirrors for how empty you feel when I'm not watching. That's the difference between us," I said, meeting her gaze. "I don't need to be watched to feel like I exist." Her lip curled slightly. "They all leave Celeste. Eventually. Milo's no different. He just hasn't seen the cracks yet." "Then why do you keep circling us like a vulture?" "Because vultures only show up when something's already dying." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Maybe. Or maybe you're just terrified that this time you can't break me. You always confuse love with leverage. And you confuse attention with affection." She took a sharp breath like she might spit something nastier, but Milo returned, then drinks in hand, and her face shifted instantly. She smiled at him like we were in the middle of a charming story instead of a cold war. "Milo," she said brightly, "this party's so chic. You and Celeste are really something." He nodded slowly, offering me my glass. "We're good." That word hung in the air like a warning. Caroline gave a tiny wave. "Enjoy the night," she said, turning on her heel and disappearing back into the crowd, leaving only a whiff of perfume and tension behind. Milo raised an eyebrow. "What'd she say?" I shook my head. Nothing she hasn't said before. Just in prettier packaging. We stood together near the railing, watching the city stretch beneath us like a sleeping beast. The lights below flickered like stars that had dropped too close. "She's not done, is she?" he asked. "Not even close." He exhaled slowly, then put his drink down untouched. "This is exhausting, Celeste. I didn't sign up for a war." I reached for his hand. "You signed up for me. And I'd do it again," he said. "But she's getting in my head." "I know. And she's playing long. This isn't about jealousy anymore. This is about breaking us apart one thread at a time." I looked out over the edge of the rooftop, wind brushing my hair across my cheek. "Then we don't give her threads to pull." He didn't respond right away. Then quietly he said, "It's hard to fight someone who doesn't care about the rules." So we stopped playing by hers. The rest of the night passed in fragments. Caroline didn't speak to us again, but her presence lingered like smoke after a fire. People laughed and danced, and we stayed until Lana blew out her candles and made a wish none of us asked about. Back at the apartment, Milo dropped his keys on the counter and pulled off his jacket. "Did she ever care about anyone?" he asked. I sat on the couch, pulling my heels off slowly. "Only herself." He leaned in the doorway, staring at the floor. "I hate that someone like her can make me doubt you." I stood and walked toward him. "Then don't let her." "I'm right here. I've always been right here." He didn't speak again, just pulled me into his arms like he was afraid I'd vanish. But even in the quiet, even in his warmth, I felt the echo of her words. "Milo is your weakness." And maybe for the first time she was right about something. The following Friday, I had planned to meet Milo at the university library after his econ seminar. I got out of class early and decided to surprise him. It had been a quiet few days, almost too quiet. Caroline hadn't texted, hadn't shown up unexpectedly, hadn't floated rumors. That alone should have warned me. I stepped through the library's glass doors just after 6. The place was calm, a few students scattered between study tables and reading nooks. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, heading toward the back alcove Milo usually liked. He said it was the only spot on campus where his thoughts could breathe. I was halfway down the hallway when I heard raised voices. At first, I slowed, thinking someone was arguing. But the voice I heard next turned my stomach. "Caroline." I picked up pace, heart hammering. As I reached the corner, I stopped. She was there right in front of him. Milo looked tense, his jaw locked, hands at his sides. She said something I couldn't make out, stepped forward fast, and then she kissed him. It wasn't soft, it wasn't slow. It was like a strike, bold and desperate. Milo pulled back instantly and shoved her shoulder hard enough to stagger her. "Are you insane?" he yelled, voice echoing through the quiet floor. I turned the corner then. Caroline whipped around, startled, lipstick smeared at the corner of her mouth. Milo's eyes widened when he saw me. I kept walking until I was beside him. I said, looking him straight in the eyes. I saw everything. And I believe you. A few students peeked up from nearby desks. One of them had their phone out, pointed in our direction. I didn't care, let them film. Let the whole world see who Caroline really was. Caroline didn't say a word. She stared at me like I had ruined her final act. Then she spun on her heels and walked out, her heels clicking like gunfire against the tile floor. Milo let out a breath he'd clearly been holding. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You don't need to thank me." He looked at me like he wanted to say more, but I touched his arm gently. "Let's go." We walked out together, side by side, not speaking until we reached the sidewalk. The late sun cast long shadows across the quad. Milo stopped, hands in his pockets. "I didn't see it coming. I swear. I believe you." I said it inside. "I'll keep saying it if you need me to." "I don't deserve that kind of loyalty," he said. "Not after everything she's tried. You didn't ask for this. She pushed herself into our lives. You tried to protect me. But now she did this in front of witnesses." Milo nodded, the tension in his shoulders beginning to ease. "And she thought no one would believe me," I added. "She thought wrong." That night the video surfaced on campus Reddit. The caption was brutal. "Sister kisses little sis's boyfriend at library. Gets rejected. Screams. Leaves." It had nearly 20,000 views by morning. Then the comments started. "Wait, isn't that the same girl who stole a scholarship from that transfer student? She's the one who framed her roommate for cheating freshman year, right? Didn't she lie to get on the business club board?" It was like a dam breaking. Story after story. Anonymous users, some with names, came forward with screenshots, emails, memories. Caroline's perfect facade shattered in 1,000 pieces. The student newspaper published an expose that Monday. The university launched an internal investigation. Caroline tried to play victim. She posted a long melodramatic caption about how women tear each other down, about how people twist things when they don't know the full story. But it didn't work this time. Not when there were so many full stories. One of her old roommates came forward with texts showing Caroline had planted Adderall in her drawer to get her kicked out of the dorm. A former friend posted screenshots where Caroline bragged about manipulating professors for better grades. By Thursday, the student government issued a statement distancing itself from her entirely. And me, I didn't say a word publicly. I didn't repost the clip. I didn't comment. I just watched. I watched as Caroline's empire built on charm and control caved in under the weight of receipts. She passed me on campus, once a scarf wrapped around her head like she could vanish into it. She didn't make eye contact. Didn't sneer, didn't speak. For the first time in years, she had nothing to say. Milo and I spent that weekend inside, away from the noise. We watched old movies. Ordered takeout. He read me terrible poetry from some class anthology just to make me laugh. But beneath it all, I felt something deeper settling in. It wasn't triumph, not exactly. It was release. And something else too. Maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of peace. It started with a single question over breakfast. "What if we just did it?" Milo asked with a casual shrug, like he wasn't rewriting the story of us in one breath. We were sitting in our little kitchen, light pouring in from the window over the sink, plates half full with pancakes and berries. Did what I asked, even though I knew. Got married, he said. Nothing big, no chaos. Just us and the people who matter. I blinked, heart stuttering for a second. You're serious? He reached for my hand across the table. I want to marry you, Celeste. I've wanted to for a while now. But more than that, I want to start a life where no one else gets to write the script but us. I stared at him, at the soft curl in his hair, the steadiness in his eyes. I thought about everything we had survived. The lies, the manipulation, the constant threat of being pulled apart. And then I said yes. We planned the wedding in 3 weeks. Not because we were rushing, but because we didn't want to give the world time to interfere. It was small. Just family and a few friends. The ceremony was held in a botanical garden outside Portland, under a canopy of oaks and fairy lights. The forecast threatened rain, but the sky held cloudy but dry. I wore a satin dress with thin straps and a low back. Milo wore a charcoal gray suit that made him look like something out of an old film reel. Lana cried the minute she saw me. Milo's mom couldn't stop hugging me. Even my dad, who once said I was too impulsive to love properly, choked up when he gave me away. Caroline wasn't invited. Not because we were being petty, but because this wasn't a show, it wasn't a battle. It wasn't about her. Or so I thought. The ceremony began just before sunset. We stood beneath a circle of birch branches wrapped in twine and white flowers. A close friend officiated, her voice clear and warm. There was music soft and unintrusive. The guests sat on white folding chairs, all facing forward. And yet when I looked to the very back row, I saw her. She sat alone in a dark green dress, hair down, face unreadable. No one had noticed her come in. She hadn't caused a scene. She hadn't spoken. She just sat there, hands folded in her lap, watching. I felt my stomach twist, but I didn't break focus. This wasn't her moment. This was mine. Then came the vows. Milo cleared his throat, pulling a folded paper from his pocket, but he didn't read from it. He looked at me, then looked past me, eyes focused somewhere behind the crowd. Caroline, if you're here, and I think you are, I need to say something before anything else. A few heads turned. I never chose you. His voice didn't waver. Not once. Not even when you tried to make it look like I did. Not even when you made me question myself. I chose Celeste. Every day I choose her. He turned back to me, and now his voice softened. Because with her, I never had to wonder if love came with strings. She was never a performance. She was real. Tears burned my eyes as he took my hands. You've seen the worst of me, he said, and you stayed. You've had every reason to run, and you didn't. So I make this vow not just to love you, but to protect the peace we built together. No matter what shadows come. I wanted to speak, but my throat was thick with feeling. Somehow I found my words. Milo, I said you were never my plan. You were the risk I didn't know how to take until I did. You were the reason I stopped fighting for scraps and started believing I could have the whole thing. You are not a revenge story. You are the rewrite. He smiled through glassy eyes, and we slipped rings onto trembling fingers. When the officiant said the words, "You may kiss the bride," the world blurred into a warmth I didn't know could exist without pain. Applause rose around us. Caroline was gone by the time we turned around. I never saw her leave. But I didn't need to. She had heard everything. And maybe that was the closest thing to closure we'd ever get. Later, after cake and dancing and 100 small joys, I stepped out onto the garden path alone. The sky was dusky blue, stars peeking through clouds. Fireflies blinked around the hedges. I took a deep breath and looked back at the lights and laughter behind me. For years, I had been the girl standing in someone else's shadow. But tonight, I wasn't behind anyone. I had stepped into the light. That Monday morning, the world kept moving. The coffee brewed. Milo kissed the top of my head before class. The sun fell across our tiny living room, catching the bouquet still hanging upside down to dry by the window. Everything was calm, gentle, real. But I knew Caroline would not disappear quietly. By Wednesday, it happened. My phone buzzed with a campus-wide announcement. Caroline Morgan had officially been removed from her position as president of the Student Senate. The notice was vague, citing internal policy violations and conduct unbecoming of a leadership figure. Students whispered more than the school dared to write. Rumors said she was caught accessing election records illegally. Others said screenshots had surfaced from her private messages to club sponsors, pushing them to vote against rivals. Someone even posted a blurry video of her crying in the dean's office, pacing in heels and pointing fingers. And Ethan, his name appeared in a separate memo. Suspended from the business program for academic fraud pending further review. I wasn't surprised. Turns out when the dominoes fell, he didn't run, he crumbled. I didn't smile when I read the notices. But I didn't look away either. A few days later, a letter arrived in our mailbox. Heavy cream-colored paper. No return address except a red university seal. I opened it slowly, my fingers trembling more than I expected. Dear Celeste Morgan, we are pleased to inform you. I covered my mouth with one hand. Milo rushed over, worried at first, then his face lit up when he saw the emblem on the page. Prescott Research Fellowship, he said, wide-eyed. That's huge, babe. Only 3 students in the entire university were chosen each year. It wasn't just a research group. It was a ticket to graduate funding, to academic conferences, to being taken seriously in rooms that rarely opened for people like me. I made it, I whispered. I actually made it. He spun me in a clumsy circle and we collapsed into laughter, pancakes half cooked on the stove. That night, we toasted with grocery store champagne on our tiny balcony, stars overhead, and no one but each other to impress. For once, I wasn't the girl trying to prove I belonged. I did. And then, like clockwork, the call came. I saw her name on the screen, Mom. It had been weeks since I'd last heard from her. She hadn't come to the wedding. Said it felt too sudden. Said she didn't want to be in the middle. I hesitated, then picked up. Hi, Mom. There was no greeting back, just her voice clipped and tight. Your sister's in pain, Celeste. She hasn't left her apartment. Do you even know how hard this has been for her? I took a breath. Slow. Controlled. I'm aware. She sniffed. And yet you got married like nothing happened. Do you think that was wise? I nearly laughed. It was my wedding, Mom. Not a press conference. You could have waited. At least until things settled. Waited for what? For her to approve. For her to ruin it. Her voice sharpened. That's not fair. Fair. Caroline kissed Milo in public and tried to destroy our relationship. She made sure people thought I was crazy. She stalked us. Manipulated every moment. And now I'm the villain. She's hurting Celeste. So am I. But no one ever called her out when she hurt me. I pressed my palm against the kitchen counter, grounding myself. Did you ever ask her to stop? When she spread rumors about me and Asher. When she told Lana I cheated. When she told my professor I plagiarized. Silence. Not stunned, not defensive, just quiet. I didn't think it would go this far, she said finally. I thought it was just sister drama. It wasn't drama, it was cruelty. Another beat of silence. I just want both my daughters to be okay. I know. But not at my expense anymore. There it was, my line in the sand. For the first time, I wasn't apologizing just to keep the peace. Mom didn't reply right away, and I didn't push her to. After a moment, I said softly, I hope she heals. I do. But I'm done making myself smaller to make her feel better. Then I ended the call. Calm. Without venom, without tears. I stared out the window for a long time. Later that night, Milo found me curled on the couch, staring at the blank television screen. He didn't say anything. Just lifted my feet onto his lap and rubbed slow circles on my ankle with his thumb. It's not your job to carry her damage, he said. I know. And your mom's silence isn't your responsibility either. I nodded. But it still hurt, I admitted. He leaned down and kissed my knee. I know. The next day, I packed the acceptance letter into a plastic sleeve and pinned it to our corkboard above the desk. Not because I needed to see it, but because I needed to remember it was mine. Earned. Without her. There would always be people who saw me as secondary. But they didn't get to decide who I was anymore. Not Caroline. Not Mom. Not anyone but me. The first morning in our new place, I woke up to the sound of birds instead of voices. No banging doors, no raised arguments, just the muffled hum of a distant lawnmower and the smell of Milo burning toast again. We had officially moved into our tiny 2-bedroom above a dusty used bookstore in a quiet part of Evanston. Not glamorous, but new. Not perfect, but ours. I stood at the window for a long time, staring out at rows of small houses and maple trees swaying in the summer breeze. The box fan in the corner buzzed steadily. Our life had narrowed in size, but not in color. Milo had already found a part-time coaching job at a local athletic center. His first day, a group of high schoolers had challenged him to a scrimmage. He beat them all by 10 points and walked away with an ice pack on one knee and a permanent grin. Meanwhile, I started working in a cognitive research lab downtown where I spent my hours reading brain scans and running memory trials on volunteers. We didn't talk about the past much. Not because we were pretending it didn't happen, but because it didn't feel like it belonged in our kitchen where we painted our mugs with Sharpie initials or in the tiny bathroom where we squeezed past each other brushing our teeth. It belonged somewhere behind us, locked in a box neither of us cared to open. And then one afternoon I came home to find a letter in our mailbox. No return address. Just my full name scrawled across the front in sharp dramatic loops I recognized instantly. Caroline. I sat down on the bottom step and stared at it for a while, letting the late sun warm my back. The envelope was sealed, but not tightly. I opened it carefully, unfolding a single page. You win. Maybe I never wanted to be loved. Just to win. I'm leaving. That was it. No apology, no context. No signature beyond her name scratched at the bottom like a final dare. I read it twice. Then again. It didn't make me cry. But it didn't make me feel better either. Milo came out holding 2 cold lemonades. When he saw my face, he paused. What's that? A letter, I said. From Caroline. He handed me the drink without asking anything else and sat beside me. She says she's leaving, I added. Milo glanced at the page, then leaned back against the step. Do you believe her? I thought about it. I wanted to say no. I wanted to believe she'd crafted this for effect the way she always did. But something about the note, its flatness, its absence of flair, felt different. I think she meant it. Not sure if she's sorry, she didn't say. Would it matter if she did? I looked down at my hands folded in my lap. I don't know. I think I wanted to hear it. Just once. Milo reached over, brushed a loose thread off my sleeve. Maybe she doesn't know how to say sorry. Maybe that's her loss. We sat there a while longer, sipping lemonade and watching a squirrel dig furiously in the neighbor's flower bed. That night I tucked the letter in a drawer, then changed my mind and put it in the recycling bin. Not out of anger, just clarity. I didn't need it. I didn't need her to admit anything for it to be real. The next few weeks passed quietly. We settled into routines. Saturday groceries. Sunday walks by the lake. Tuesday trivia nights where Milo pretended he didn't know Broadway musicals but always got the answers right. Some evenings he would dribble a basketball down our block, kids chasing him barefoot, their laughter echoing. Other nights I would bring home takeout and we'd eat on the floor with an old movie playing in the background. It was simple, peaceful. Until the phone rang again. It was Mom. Her voice, as always, began with silence. I heard Caroline's leaving, she said finally. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. She didn't tell me where. Just that she needed distance. I didn't respond. She sighed. She's not doing well. Is she ever? I asked. That's not fair, Celeste. No, I said. It's not. But neither was what she did to me for years, and you never stepped in. Another pause. Longer this time. Maybe I didn't know how. Maybe you didn't want to. She didn't argue. She just breathed. I just wanted you both to be close, she said eventually. You wanted me quiet. That's different. She didn't deny it. For once. I'm not calling to fix anything, she said. I wanted you to know she left your wedding photo on her nightstand. She took it with her. That stopped me. Not because it was touching, but because it was confusing. I didn't know what that meant. I still don't. But maybe peace isn't about answers. Maybe it's about choosing not to chase every question. After we hung up, I stood for a long time by the kitchen sink watching the condensation run down my glass. Milo came in, eyes searching mine. You okay? I nodded. She took our picture with her, I said. He didn't ask who. She's gone now, I added. Then let her go. We didn't talk about it again. Instead, that evening we danced barefoot in the living room to an old Motown record we found at a thrift store. The room smelled like candle wax and basil from our kitchen garden. Outside, the rain started falling, tapping the windows with slow, steady rhythm. And for the first time, I didn't brace for it to end. I let myself believe it. Maybe peace wasn't perfect. Maybe it was just real. And for the first time, that was more than enough. The first signs of spring came with tiny green shoots pushing through the cracks in the sidewalk. Our windowsill herbs began to perk up, and for the first time since we moved in, I left the jacket on the hook and walked outside in just a sweater. I was stirring tea in the kitchen when Mom showed up unannounced. She knocked softly the way someone does when they hope you're not home. Milo was out at practice, so it was just me. I opened the door and stepped aside without a word. She looked older than I remembered, tired in a quiet way. Her coat was too big for the weather, and her hands fidgeted with the strap of her purse as she sat on our small couch, eyes darting around as if she didn't expect anything to feel real. I made her tea, though she didn't ask. She took one sip and set it down untouched afterward. "Your sister's in New Mexico," she said suddenly. "Working on a horse ranch of all places." She sent me a postcard with a picture of a red canyon. Said it's peaceful there. I nodded slowly, unsure what she wanted me to do with that information. "She's not the same," Mom added. "At least not entirely. Says she's trying to figure herself out." I didn't respond. I didn't ask for details. I didn't ask if Caroline was doing better or worse. I didn't ask if she missed us, because none of it was mine to carry anymore. That part of my life had ended. And when someone walks out of your story, the pages don't wait for their return. They keep turning. Mom looked at me like she wanted to say more, but instead, she reached over and gently touched my wrist. "You look happy," she said. "I am." "That's good. I want that for you." There was a pause. "I wish I'd seen you sooner," she added, almost in a whisper. I didn't reply, but I didn't pull away either. After she left, I stood at the window again, watching her disappear down the street. She never turned around. That night, Milo brought home dinner in a brown paper bag and something small wrapped in tissue paper. He sat it in front of me and said nothing. I slowly peeled the paper back to reveal a silver bracelet, simple and clean with a flat clasp that glinted in the light. Inside the clasp was a tiny engraving. "Safe." I looked up at him, confused. "You don't need saving," he said. "You never did. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve to feel safe. Every day. Even on the days when it's hard to believe it." I didn't say anything. I just reached out and let him clasp it around my wrist. It was cool against my skin, but it warmed quickly. Later, I sat on the couch, legs tucked beneath me, and watched him move around our kitchen like it was a stage he'd memorized. He poured us each a drink and sat beside me without asking what I was thinking. I turned my hand over the silver, catching a sliver of lamplight. I had spent so long surviving, so long proving myself, so long fighting battles I never chose. And now finally I could feel the weight lifting. We didn't need loud declarations. We didn't need revenge written in headlines. We just needed this. A tiny apartment. A quiet night. A silver bracelet that didn't promise anything except presence. Spring came with slow mornings and bike rides. With Milo building me a shelf from scraps he found by the curb. With me cooking breakfast without setting off the smoke alarm. Some evenings we'd walk to the park and sit under the same tree until the sun dipped low. The air smelled like damp earth and possibility. I got a promotion at the lab, offered more hours and a chance to lead my own study. Milo's team won their first city tournament, and the players lifted him onto their shoulders like some kind of legend. One Saturday, we visited the community market, and a woman selling candles asked how long we'd been together. Milo said 3 years. I said 2.5. We laughed and said both were right in different ways. At home, we lit the lavender candle she gave us as a gift and let it burn while we played cards on the floor. He caught me staring at the flame once. "What is it?" he asked. I shook my head, smiling. "Nothing. Just thinking how strange it feels to not look over my shoulder anymore." He reached across and held my hand. "It's yours now. The road, the air, the stillness. You don't have to earn it, just live in it." That night I opened my journal and wrote one sentence. "Peace doesn't knock. You let it in." I closed the book and didn't write again for weeks. Because for the first time, I didn't need to explain anything to myself. The story was still mine. But it wasn't about her anymore, it was about us. And spring, the seasons changed again. Spring ripened into early summer, and the air carried warmth in a way that felt earned. Life had softened. Not because it stopped throwing challenges, but because I stopped flinching. Milo got the letter over breakfast. He was slicing into a grapefruit when he unfolded the envelope, eyes scanning faster with each line. He didn't smile, not right away. He looked up at me like he was searching for permission. "It's from Northwestern," he said. "Full ride for grad school. Sports psychology program. Starts this fall." I blinked once, then reached for his hand. "That's amazing," I whispered. "It is. But Chicago's far." "I know." We sat in the silence together, letting the moment breathe. "You should go," I said finally. "No hesitation. No guilt. You've worked for this." "I'll come back every weekend," he said. "You don't have to." "But I will." We didn't cry. There wasn't sadness in it, just the quiet acknowledgement that love changes shape when it grows, not when it breaks. The next few weeks passed with a rhythm I almost didn't want to disrupt. We packed his things slowly. I labeled the boxes while he double-checked flight prices. He left behind a shirt I loved, a coffee mug that chipped when we first moved in, and a photo of us at the lake last fall, grinning with windblown hair and frozen cheeks. After he left, I rearranged the furniture just slightly. Bought new pillowcases. Hung a small corkboard in the hallway with 3 pinned items, the letter he left me. Our first Christmas, the bracelet with the word safe carved inside, and a wedding photo of us, blurry and imperfect but full of light. Not trophies. Just truth. One afternoon, while sorting through old email threads for work, I noticed a new message in my inbox. No subject line. Just a name I hadn't seen in months. Caroline. I hovered over it for a moment. Then clicked. The email was short. "I know you could have burned everything down, but you didn't. I don't know who I am yet, but I'm trying. Thank you, I guess." For not being me, I stared at it for a long while. Not angry. Not afraid. Just still. I clicked reply and typed. "Trying is enough. Take care." I hit send before I could overthink it. The email didn't change anything. It didn't erase the scars or rewrite the past, but it marked something. A final breath in a room I'd been trapped in for years. That night I walked to the corner bookstore and bought a new journal. Not to start over, just to start again. The first page stayed blank, because for once I didn't need to explain where I was going. I just wanted to feel each step. I saw Milo again 3 weeks later. He came back with new ideas and tired eyes, carrying stories about professors who challenged him and teammates who kept him grounded. We sat at our favorite diner and split a grilled cheese like we used to. There was no dramatic reunion. Just a comfort that didn't need translation. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You too," I said. Then added, "We're not finished, you know." Never. That weekend we drove to the coast. No destination, just movement. We parked by the water, and I stood barefoot in the sand, the cold surprising even in June. Milo wrapped his arms around me from behind, and we watched the tide pull in. I could hear my past in the waves. All the voices that told me to shrink. All the times I stood in someone else's shadow. All the moments I thought I had to earn love by bleeding for it, and yet here I was. Whole, free. I chose myself. Not in defiance, not to win. But because I'd spent too long waiting for someone else to hand me permission to exist. That morning, I woke up early and made coffee. Saturday by the window, and opened the journal I'd bought weeks ago. This time I wrote, "Hate doesn't build freedom, choice does, and tomorrow I'll keep choosing me." If you've ever been overlooked, replaced, or made to feel like a backup plan, I hope you hear this and feel seen. I hope you know that revenge isn't always loud, and healing doesn't always come wrapped in apologies. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to choose yourself quietly. And if this story touched something in you, if you've ever walked through fire and come out softer instead of bitter, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, share your story, or just say hello. I read every word. Thank you for spending time with mine.